Secret of the Silver Key, written by Phyllis J. Perry. Welcome back, warrior friends. We are ready for chapter number 9 in Secret of the Silver Key. Right after school on Thursday, Fribble ate his snack at home and then he got down the telephone book. He also looked in the yellow pages under stamps, collectors, and he found the Bridge Street Stamp and Coin Shop. He dialed the number. Bridge Street Coin and Stamp and Coin Shop, Dusty Squint speaking. May I help you? Asked a friendly sounding man. I hope so, Fribble said. I have 2 old stamps and I'd like to bring them in to show you and find out how much they're worth. I see, said the voice. And when do you want to come in? My father can bring me Saturday morning. Well, I'll be here, said the man. I'm the owner of the shop, and I'd be glad to help you. Do you buy stamps? Asked Fribble. Yes, I buy and sell them, said Mr. Squint. What's your name? My name is Fribble. Well, Fribble, I look forward to seeing you and your stamps on Saturday. Fribble hung up the phone. In just 2 days, an expert would look at his stamps. Fribble quivered with excitement. On Friday morning, Fribble walked Scamper to school and left him at the playground. Then Fribble went down to the library to see Mrs. Longwhiskers. Hello, Fribble, she said when she saw him come in. What can I help you find today? I was wondering if our library has any books about stamp collecting, Fribble asked. I read 2 from the downtown library, and I'd like to read more. Why, I didn't know you were interested in stamp collecting, Fribble. I am, said Fribble, but I don't know much about them yet. Well, if you decide to become a stamp collector, you'll have a lot of company, Mrs. Longwhiskers said. 1 out of every 10 people in the United States collects stamps. In fact, I'm a stamp collector myself. Really? Said Fribble. Yes. And we have a good book about stamp collecting as a hobby. Mrs. Longwhiskers didn't even have to look it up. She led Fribble right straight to the 700s in the nonfiction section. Did you see the article in the newspaper last week about the new stamp that's coming out? She asked as she helped Fribble find a book that was called Your Hobby, Stamp Collecting. Fribble happily clutched the book with his big paws. No, I didn't see anything about stamps in the paper, he said. Well, let me show you, said Mrs. Longwhiskers. She led Fribble over to the spot where they kept the newspapers. She picked up the Chutterville Times from last Sunday, and she began to thumb through it. Oh, here it is, she said, holding up the paper for him. Fribble spread the paper out onto the table and he began to read. The article said that the government was printing a stamp in honor of the 100th anniversary of Orville and Wilbur Wright's first flight. It would be a 37-cent stamp. Wow, Fribble said. It says here that they're printing 85 million of these stamps. I want one, and it only costs 37 cents. Yes, said Mrs. Longwhiskers. The first day they're out, only 2 post offices will sell them. But at the very next day, you'll be able to buy them at any post office. Even here in Chutterville? Asked Fribble. Yes, indeed. Fribble checked out the stamp collecting book and he sat down to read it until the bell rang. He was fascinated to learn about an island in the South Pacific that sent its mail by the tin can. No planes came to the little island, and coral reefs prevented any big ships from reaching it. So swimmers would push the mail out to the boats in 5-gallon tin cans. Once, when Fribble turned a page in the book, his heart skipped a beat. There was a picture of a hot air balloon stamp. It wasn't the buffalo balloon, but it was a balloon called Juniper. When the bell rang, Fribble reluctantly closed his book and he went to class. He'd read more later, and he promised himself. After all, he thought, there's no reason why a baseball player can't be a stamp collector too. That night, He had trouble falling asleep. He kept wondering what he would learn at the stamp shop the next day. When it was almost time to leave for the Bridge Street Stamp and Coin Shop on Saturday morning, Fribble was jumping up and down with excitement. At 5 minutes to 10, Fribble ran to his treasure chest, closely followed by Scamper. He unlocked it with the key and he dumped all his baseball stuff out. And then he removed the bottom. He took out the envelope that was holding the 2 stamps. And instead of shoving the envelope into his pocket where it might get crumpled, Fribble carried it carefully in his paws. He knew now that the condition of the stamp was important. He didn't want to add any creases or wrinkles to his stamp. On the drive to the shop, Fribble held the envelope in his lap with one paw, and he nervously smoothed out his whiskers with the other. There was a parking spot right in front, and they had to walk only a few steps to the shop. Once inside, Fribble hurried straight to the counter, where they were greeted by a roly-poly mouse with a smile on his face. Mr. Squint? Fribble tightly clutched his envelope of stamps. That's me, and you must be Fribble. Yes, I'm Fribble, and this is my father and my brother, Fribble answered. Well, glad to see all of you. I'm Dusty Squint, he said. Now, what kind of stamps do you have? They're both buffalo balloon stamps, Fribble said. Really? What do they look like? Blue with a balloon in the center, and it says 5 cents across the bottom. If they're a real buffalo balloon stamp, and they're in good condition, they could be worth quite a bit of money, Mr. Squint said. Let's have a peek. Fribble placed the envelope on the counter, and Dusty reached in using a pair of tongs to withdraw the stamps from the envelopes. You need to be very careful with valuable stamps, he explained. He laid the stamps out onto a velvet pad, and he carefully examined them with a magnifying glass. Fribble shot a look at his father and his brother. Were they as nervous as he was? Then he turned toward Mr. Squint, and he watched, and he waited, and he held his breath. Mr. Squint took his time with each stamp, looking at the front and the back. Fribble's nose quivered and his tail whipped through the air. Just when Fribble thought that he might burst with excitement or fall over and faint, Mr. Squint smiled. You're right, he said, looking at Fribble. You have 2 genuine balloon stamps in good condition. Fribble exhaled. He felt so relieved. His legs were wobbly. How did you come to have these? Mr. Squint asked. Fribble explained about the antique birthday chest and how he learned about the postmaster, Fleet Milton, how he had gotten to Nashville, Tennessee in 1877 to watch the Samuel Archer King fly his buffalo balloon. Well, you have 2 great stamps, Mr. Squint said. And are they worth lots and lots of money? Asked Scamper. Fribble was embarrassed that his little brother blurted out his question, but truthfully, that was exactly what he wanted to know. Mr. Squint pulled out a book. It was a Scott's Specialized Catalog. He used the index and then quickly flipped to a page. It took him only a moment to locate the buffalo balloon stamp. Here it is, he said. This is what you would pay if you were in a store and you wanted to buy one of these stamps. He pushed the book toward them and he pointed to the price that was next to the picture of the stamp. The price had a 2 followed by lots of zeros. $200? Fribble's eyes were wide open. No, Mr. Squint corrected him. $2,000. Of course, a dealer like me doesn't pay that much. We buy stamps for a lot less than they're worth because we have to run our shops and we have to pay people to work here, and sometimes we have to keep the stamps for quite a long time before a customer comes in who wants to buy them. Well, how much would you pay for one of my stamps? Asked Fribble. I would give you $1,500 for each of them, said Mr. Squint. Fribble's father looked shocked. I'm amazed, he said. Well, the buffalo balloon is an old and valuable stamp, said Mr. Squint. Wow, Fribble said. So much money. Is it really up to me, Dad? Yes, son, said his father. The chest was your birthday present, so you get to decide what you want to do. Fribble had made up his mind quickly. I'll sell you one of them, he said, but I want to keep the other one and start my own collection. Going to be a collector, are you? Asked Mr. Squint. Well, that's great. I'll toss in a stamp album for free. Maybe you'll become a good customer. Only a few minutes later, Fribble and his father and Scamper left the Bridge Street coin and stamp shop. Fribble carried a handsome new stamp album with his buffalo balloon stamp in it, and he carried a check that was made out to him for $1,500. What you gonna do with your money? Scamper asked on the way home. Fribble smiled. I'm gonna buy the Slugger McGraw baseball, he said, and I have a plan for the rest. That's the end of chapter 9. We only have one more chapter left in our book, chapter 10, and we'll find out in chapter 10, what does Fribble decide to do with all of that money other than buying a Slugger McGraw baseball? Sounds like he's got another plan in mind. We'll find out next time.